I don't even know how to start this episode. Christ have mercy. 2 children have been killed, 17 others injured at a shooting during Mass at a Catholic school at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This happened just a couple of hours ago. Obviously, news is still breaking about this, information about everything, about who the victims are, who the shooter is. That's all trickling in. And the point of this emergency episode today is not to talk about the details of the breaking news. The point of this, I predicted to Spencer, my producer, hours ago, before we knew the identity of this shooter, this murderer. I predicted to Spencer that the shooter would be trans, would be white, and that he would have been a former attendee of this school. Well, it turns out that his mother worked at that school. Close enough. I knew it. In fact, his mother is the one who signed off on his name transition document back in 2020 when he was a child. I knew it. This is Carol Markowitz, I believe, was the first to report the identity of this shooter. Can we bring that post up on the screen? This is what Carol Markowitz posted. She said, the Minnesota shooter, Robin Westman. I refuse to call this person Robin. His name was Robert Westman until his mother transed him back in 2020. He is a biological male who identified as a woman. His parents signed off on his transition when he was a child. His mother should be in prison. You should be in prison if you trans your child. It's child abuse. And to think that she worked at a Catholic church. There's a reason why I predicted this hours ago when I said to Spencer, mark my words, this is going to be a white, probably male, trans shooter who went to this school. There's a reason why I knew that. It's not just because I happened to guess correctly or because I had some kind of crystal ball. There's a reason why I knew that. This is going to keep happening. Just like it happened in Nashville, Tennessee at Covenant Christian School, where a trans-identifying individual happened to be a biological woman being transed into a man, murdered children at a Christian school. This is going to keep happening unless we acknowledge that the transgender ideology isn't just anti-biology. It's not just child abuse. It's not just anti-humanity. It's not just disgusting. It's not just creating perpetual medical patients by arbitrarily chopping off the body parts of otherwise physically healthy young people. All of that is bad. All of that is evil. Any doctor, any medical provider, any healthcare official, any parent, any teacher, any administrator who participates in the indoctrination, the grooming, or the facilitation of transgender children ought to be in prison. All of that's true. But there's more. The transgender ideology is intended to be violent. The transgender ideology is intended to do exactly what it did to Aubrey Hale in Nashville and exactly what it did to Robert Westman in Minneapolis. It's intended to turn vulnerable young people into kamikazes. And by the way, let's just get this out of the way right now. The political views of this individual, as far as we know, I assume we're going to find out more information. We do minute by minute, something like this. The internet is vastly superior at uncovering information than law enforcement ever is. But according to photographs that are reportedly photographs of this shooter's weapon, the weapon he used to commit this, I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach. Opening fire at children attending Mass? According to photographs obtained of his weapon, he, of course, had a social media footprint. He posted this online. He wrote on some part of his firearm. He wrote about killing Trump. So his political ideology, there you go. He was never Trump. He wasn't a Republican. He was a leftist. Yeah, no kidding. If you are a transgender identifying person, it's a safe assumption that you're not a Republican. It's a safe assumption that you are vehemently against us. Now, a couple of things that we need to know, that we already know. We're going to find out a lot more, but we already know. We are in a battle right now of good versus evil. There is no explanation other than the demonic that could motivate a human being to commit a crime like this. To barricade the doors of a church. This school is K through 8th grade. They were on their first day of school, going to mass at 8 a.m. And he planned this. Makes me sick to my stomach. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, he's a rabid leftist, had the most horrendous response to this. These were children at mass, devout Catholics, members of families who decided that their children's eternal soul is the most important thing and sent them to a Catholic school. And this is the way that the mayor of Minneapolis spit in their faces. Take a listen.
These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church.
Okay, stop it. Stop it right there. Stop it right there.
That should be learning.
Mayor Jacob Frey, your city is so dangerous that there reportedly were not enough police resources to respond to this crime. How dare you malign the religion of these children? These children, I assume, are martyrs for their faith. And I pray that they're in the arms of Jesus right now. Make no mistake, the radical left and the ideological grip that they have on our cities, on our law enforcement, on the laws, the state laws, and on our public school system bear responsibility for the formation of such heinous criminals. This is Tim Walz's state, Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz. And state law under Governor Tim Walz prohibits firearms in school zones. What does that mean? That means that schools are gun-free zones. What happens when there are gun-free zones? It's an invitation for criminals to commit crimes because they know their victims are sitting ducks. The fact that we need security to participate in the sacrifice of the Mass makes me sick. And by the way, the Catholic Church itself, the Archdiocese of St. Paul, the entire U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops better step up here. There better be armed security at Catholic churches and Catholic schools across the nation. Armed security, not gun control. Let me go back to what I was saying at the beginning. I predicted to Spencer that this shooter would be transgender and probably white, and that he would have attended the school. Now, again, I don't know if he attended the school. I don't think we have that information yet. We do know his mother worked at the school, which close enough. He had the association necessary to feel that this was a personal target to him. So why did I know immediately that this shooter was going to be a white man and transgender? Because of two things that are indoctrinated into our children, because of critical race theory and because of the trans ideology. Now, remember that both critical race theory and the transgender ideology, which the technical name, the academic name of the transgender ideology is queer theory. Critical race theory and queer theory are both neo-Marxist, meaning they're offshoots of critical theory. Critical theory is a Marxist theory that came out of the Frankfurt School back in the 1960s. And the essence of critical theory is that relentless criticism of institutions leads to their destruction. But the relentless criticism needs to be framed within the Marxist dialectic. The Marxist dialectic is the oppressor versus the oppressed. So if you think of Karl Marx's economic Marxism, he said that the working class needs to revolt against the ruling class because the ruling class is oppressing the working class. Oppressor versus oppressed. The oppressed needs to rise up against the oppressor. Critical theory, again, from the Frankfurt School back in the 1960s, takes the economic Marxism framework and applies it to culture. Criticize the institutions. Then you have critical race theory and queer theory that take the idea that relentless criticism of an institution will destroy that institution, and they hone in on particular institutions. So critical race theory hones in on race, queer theory hones in on sex and gender. These are obviously incredibly important tenets of reality. So what happens when our children are indoctrinated with critical race theory and then trans ideology? It's like a 1-2 punch. What happens first is young people are inundated with critical race theory. And especially for young white people, this turns young white people, they start feeling this incredible self-loathing because they're told it doesn't matter how you think about people of another race. It doesn't matter if you aren't racist at all. It doesn't matter if you've never said a racist thing or thought a racist thought or acted in any kind of racist way. It doesn't matter because the color of your skin means that you enjoy white privilege. All of your success is built on the back of those who were oppressed by people who look like you hundreds of years ago, and you bear responsibility for that. There's no way you can get away from it. How do you think young people react to that? They start harboring this incredible self-loathing. I'm bad. They feel I'm bad. At the same time, the transgender ideology tells them that if you have any kind of feelings of confusion or discomfort in your body, you can change your gender. And because critical race theory is specifically targeted against white men, white women to a certain extent, but mostly men, these young white men in our school systems who are told that they are bad because they are white and that men are inherently toxic. And then they're also told by queer theory that it's okay. The self-loathing you feel must mean that you're not really a man. You'll feel more comfortable if you just trans into a woman. And then they're also told, by the way, now that you have transed, that's the only way that you can throw off your position as an oppressor. If you are a white man, there's no escaping the fact that you are in the oppressor category unless you become one of the oppressed. But join us, put on this mantle, this LGBTQIA+++ mantle. Suddenly, you're one of the oppressed and you're okay. You're not bad. You're not toxic. You're not evil. You're a victim. And who's victimizing you? Well, they're told Christians are victimizing them. Whites are victimizing them. Men are victimizing them. Their family is victimizing them. They're told, watch out, you're going to be subject to a genocide inflicted by Republicans and by Trump. They are turned against themselves and everything around them. And it's intentional for the purpose, the express purpose of grooming these vulnerable young people into committing acts of violence. Because the purpose of critical race theory and the purpose of queer theory, they're neo-Marxist theories. Marxism is an inherently violent ideology. For Marxism to become the reality requires a revolution, not just a revolution of ideas, of politics, a violent revolution. To start that revolution requires a vanguard. So these young people who've been steeped in this ideology, they've been groomed, they've often been abused, they're often ill. Autistic youth are often subject to the grossest form of grooming and indoctrination. They feel self-loathing because they're white, because they're men, because they're associated with Christianity. They become convinced that the only recourse, what do you expect them to do? How do you expect people to react when you've put them through decades of brainwashing and indoctrination, convincing them that they're on the verge of extinction? They've been medicated to the gills by Big Pharma, poisoned by Big Food. They're out of their mind, they're deranged, and they're captured by this ideology that's been forced on them by the radical left, and it convinces them to commit violence against themselves. It convinces them to dehumanize others so that they'll engage in acts of terrorism, so that they'll become the vanguards of the Marxist revolution. So yeah, transgender ideology is bad because it's abusive. It's bad because it's anti-biology, it's anti-humanity. But that's not the purpose of it. That's a side effect of it. The purpose of it is much more dangerous to our nation. We saw it play out in textbook form in Nashville, Tennessee 2 years ago at the Covenant School shooting. And I said then, this is going to happen again unless we acknowledge the reality of what queer theory is, an inherently violent revolutionary ideology. And here it is, happening again. Christ have mercy on our nation.